Okay, good morning everyone. Shalom Aleichem, Bruchim Habayim. Welcome everyone. We're continuing in Mishna Berura Daf Hashavua. We are up to Siman Kuf Chaf Ches, Seif Lamed Aleph. Seif Lamed Aleph. In Seif Lamed, we spoke about if the Kohein has a mum, then it could be something that could be distracting to the people, and they won't be focused on brachas kayanim. In order for the bracha to be effective, you have to be focused on it. The Mechaber concluded that if it's something that the people in the city are familiar with because they've been singing it for a long time, so then the mumen are not a problem. The Mechaber defined that in dash be'iroi means that the people are rogil and makir that mum. They could duchen even somebody who's blind in two eyes. And as long as somebody is living in the city 30 days, that's already considered dash be'iroi. So Sif Lamed Aleph. Im minhag ha'makam l'shal shal kahanim talis al pneim afil yesh b'fanav uv'yadav kama mumen yisas kapav. If the minhag of the place is to drape the talis on their face, even if they have on their face and their hands many mumin, they could duchen. They could duchen. Now, that means even if he has red polka dots and blue spots, it doesn't matter. Hagav v'davkim hayu yadav b'fnim and atalas. It's very nice that the minhag is they drape their talis on their face, but their hands have to be in the talis. If the hands are outside of the talis won't help for their hands. Says the Mishna Berura, im minhag, there's no way for people to see them. If that's not the minhag, meaning you have 10 kohanim, 9 of them, you could see their face. The 10th guy with blue polka dots on his face, he's inside the talis. So ein lecha distraction gadol mizu. Why is this kohen dressed up like a ghost for berchas kayanim? So that itself would be a distraction. Let's say the other kayanim, they get together and they make up, they'll all drape the talis over. Why? People will still gaze at them. It's still distracting. Everybody knows how easy it is to distract people by davening. All of a sudden there's a noise. Oh, whoa, what was that? If you'd be doing anything else, you'd continue doing what you're doing. But all of a sudden there's this noise. Everyone has to, turn around and look at it. So it doesn't help if everybody drapes their head, if that's not usually done. Then the Mechaber said, if the minhag hamakim is l'shal shal hakahanim, what if the minhag of the kahanim is not to drape their talis, but the people cover their face. If the people cover their face, they're going to peek. They're going to come to a look. And there's some young people, they don't have a talis. But if that's the case, what about kohanim? Even if the kohanim cover their face, what about the young kohanim? So the Magen Gibarim says that when kohanim duchen, even the bachrim kohanim cover their face. But the Ramah adds they have to make sure to cover their hands. So now what's the Ramah talking about? The Ramah has to be speaking about a mum for their hands. In other words, the Ramah is not requiring covering their hands with a talis if they have a mum on their face. The Ramah is saying that if they have a mum on their hands, they need to cover their hands. For a mum on their face, it would help. Okay. Sif Lamed Beis. Hayu yadav tzevuos istis. If the hands of the kohanim were dyed with a dye, ufua. The Ramah says istis ubua purest minei tzevaim. Types of dye. Lo yisas kabav. They cannot duchem neisham mistaklim behem. In other words, if the guy's a car mechanic, then it's going to be distracting. Again, based on what we said before, if the guy's been fixing cars in the city for the last 10 years, it's not a problem. We're talking about it's not dash be'iroi. If most people in the city, they deal in tchelas, so they all have blue hands, yisas kapav. V'chenim hu dash be'iroi yisas kapav. If people are familiar with this guy's hand coloring, then it's okay. Says the Mishnah Berura, mistaklin bohem uv'makush nagla kam shasham tas al pneim v'idem b'fnim and atas noise kapav v'chanal. Again, if the minhag is to keep your hands, face and hands inside, they kaduchin. Malachtan bekach u'mayri kishe'enoi dash be'iroi. It's talking about where people are not familiar with this occupation. The bedash. Now, one second. The Mechaber says, if roiv of the city malachtan bekach he kaduchen. The Mishnah points out that is, even though people are not familiar with it. In other words, umayri kishe'enoi dash be'iroi, the bedash be'manosai za be'iroi. It's talking about, this guy, people are unfamiliar that he's a mechanic. So Mechaber is saying, if most people in the city are mechanics, even though people are not familiar that this guy's a mechanic, he moved in a week ago, but most of the people are mechanics, so it's not a problem, it won't be distracting. People don't know him, but we've seen this before. The B'dash Munah says, if this guy is familiar in the city, even if he's the only mechanic in the city, Gam Kein Mutter, says the Beis Yosef and the Levush and the Pri Chadash and other Achronim, Uve'eze Shulchan Aruch Yishanim Kasav Zeh B'Mechaber Gufa. And in some old Shulchan Aruchs, the Mechaber himself says it. I guess we use an old Shulchan Aruch. In our Shulchan Aruch, the Mechaber himself says, V'chenim hu dash be'iroi yisa es kapav. I guess then the Chafetz Chaim's Shulchan Aruch, it didn't have it. So I wonder what it says in the first version of the Mishnah Berura in that Shulchan Aruch. In any event, either if most people have this occupation, or if people are familiar that he has this occupation, it's not an issue. So the bottom line is, if let's say a Kohein, is missing a hand or something like that, we'll have to see about missing a hand. But if the Kohein has something unusual, but people know him, it's okay. And if he drapes his head or hand under the towels, which we do anyway, it's also okay. Rabbi Isai, have a great day. Kol Tov.
Recording stopped.